And everything with cooking, though, that's so cool is it's all about technique. Your taste is your taste, period. You like a lot of salt, you put more salt in it. The technique of how you get to making that bread or that sauce or that creme brulee, whatever it is, you know the technique of how to achieve what your palate desires.
Welcome to Nashville Drummers Podcast, episode 17.
Today's guest is Memphis native and Nashville local Marcus Finnie.
Marcus is pretty much a legend at this point. If he were not the nicest dude that we know, he would be the most intimidating dude that we know. He is a beast. He's a crazy drummer and a Grammy winner, and also apparently an incredible cook. So there's that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool talking to Marcus much of the episode about the parallels between cooking and preparing meals and dishes and ingredients with that of drumming and preparing for studio sessions and playing live. And I think for not only for people interested in food, but for this episode, I think it's just really valuable to hear different parallels between drumming and different non-drumming hobbies and different activities. I think it'll be hopefully pretty relatable for many of you.
100% agree. This episode is brought to you by, hey, look at that. First time I've ever saying it. I'm so excited to say it. It's brought to you by Music Lab Nashville. Serving the Nashville, Brentwood, and Franklin areas, Music Lab Nashville offers comprehensive hands-on music lessons in contemporary techniques and styles. Students learn from the most qualified instructors in the state-of-the-art practice and performance settings. All ages, all styles, all levels. Visit nashville.musiclab.co to learn more and to sign up for a free trial lesson.
Welcome, Marcus Finnie, to the podcast. So
Thank
great
you,
to
man.
have you. We've been trying to, like most of our guests, I feel like we've been trying to schedule.
Yeah.
Especially you, though. You've been so busy, and same with us, which I guess is a good thing, right?
It is.
It's like, hey, man, a session came up, or
Yeah.
So thank you for making the time. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very appreciated.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
My first question for you is, how was that pizza?
The pizza actually tasted good. The only thing I would change is how I prep the crust. I would probably bake it a little bit before I start layering sauce and stuff on it
Okay.
to make sure you get the nice crisp bottom.
Okay.
Because, let's face it, no matter what you do here in Nashville, it's never going to taste like New York or Italy because the water is just different. And people tend to forget that water is the main source of everything that we cook. And if the water is slightly different, it's going to make everything else taste slightly different. It's just never going to be the same.
Yeah.
So I got the sauce tasting the way I wanted it to taste. So I was happy about the sauce. The toppings I got from Whole Foods, pepperoni and fresh pork sausage, and the cheese. It was like 365 Whole Foods pizza blend cheese. So It was fine. But the crust, that's the hardest part. So Next Sunday, I'm going to attempt it again and try it, and I'll post.
I'll look forward to seeing it. You ever think of doing sourdough?
I haven't. I like I said today, I'm one of the few times I baked. I don't bake a lot because there's so much error. Potential error involved. Like if your yeast is off, once it's in the oven, it's too late to fix it.
Yep.
You can't salvage things that you're baking. So it takes a little more concentration. And I should jump into it more. Like croissants are something else I want to try to make.
Yeah.
But
I've heard that's quite the process.
Yes, it is a process, man.
Multiple layers.
Multiple layers, cold, put it in the freezer, put it in the fridge for a certain time, take it out, fold, cold butter, in and out, in and out, in and out.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
I know nothing about baking.
It's a process, man.
So that was your first go ahead on the pizza?
Yeah. I've done it before years ago, but didn't really try anymore just because I was just literally discouraged by the dough.
Yeah.
It had to have been, I think the last time I made it was maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Just never tried it again. But after working at this place that I work as a kitchen assistant, I've been watching them make, and I help in prepping, but the actual customer, they actually cook the food, and I watch whatever chef is on duty at that moment. I kind of watch what they do and listen to what they say.
So, do you mind sharing what place that is? Is that a restaurant?
Sur La Table. It's not a restaurant. It's a cooking store where they sell different cookware, all clad things, scan pan, stove, Jura, coffee. I mean, all of this stuff. And they teach cooking classes there, up to 16 people in the class. And on any given day, there'll be 4 classes in a day, 4 different classes. So you'll have things like French baking in one class. The next class may be Italian pasta night.
Oh, that's so
the
cool.
next class may be Brazilian steak night. The next class may be, Thai. So it's like dishes all over the place. And so as a kitchen assistant, I'm helping to prepare for the following class while trying to clean and keep everything neat while that class is going on. So it's fun. It's labor intensive, but I've learned so much. That's the main reason why I started working there, was to kind of low key go to culinary school.
Oh yeah.
And learn.
Literally getting paid to learn this.
Yeah. And the staff, they're great. Made some really cool friends working there. And so it's just a mountain of information that I've been getting. So it's been great.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely like a topic I wanted to cover, is just your passion for food and cooking. And do you and your wife go to farmers markets around town?
Not really. I did a little bit during the pandemic. And the downtown farmers market is nice. I've been there a few times. I got a chicken there one time, a farm chicken. And I don't know if it was a particular breed of chicken, but it was very tough and unusually tough.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I don't know if I like this.
No.
Yeah.
But I did get,
Gamey.
very gamey. The main thing I get that are farm to table is one of my neighbors across the street. Their family sell eggs. So I just get farm fresh eggs from them. And it makes a big difference. Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
If anybody out there has never experienced the difference between store-bought eggs and farm fresh eggs from your friend or neighbor or whoever, it's a completely different world.
Yeah. And I don't know how much, I'm pretty sure there's some scientific data to substantiate this, but the color of the yolk is usually darker. Almost orange.
Yep.
With farm eggs versus that pale yellow. It's richer tasting, I know that. And for me, it just tastes better.
It does? I guess taste is subjective, but
sure.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
It does. It tastes noticeably better. The fat quality in the yolk is
it's like the difference in eating potato chips versus Pringles.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like nobody to this day can tell me what Pringles are.
Trying to connect it back to drumming, I'm thinking of like snare drums, right? Like
snare drums or heads or
it's subjective to a point, but it's like, okay, that you're like my first CB, snare versus like a pearl or Dennis
still
chamber
have
snare.
mine.
Right.
I still have my CB700 kit.
You a CB2?
No kidding.
Yeah, CB700 International.
Oh
I think I got it when I was 6 or 7 years old.
Did we have the same kit? Was it like a wine red?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's the only
12, 13, 16, 22.
Can you tell me what CB stands for?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it stands for crappy best. That's what my friend Caleb Franklin told me that. He's like, yeah, you know what CB stands for, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah. I still have no idea what it's made of either.
Yeah,
it's not wood.
No. Pearl used to make a lot of those brands.
I didn't.
Yeah, I think CB was one of them.
Wow.
It just didn't have the Pearl name on it.
Yeah,
early on.
I still have it. And for a while, I still used it when I got in town because I didn't have a kit.
Yeah.
Except for that one, like high school, coming here, playing gigs around town, jazz. I had a piccolo pearl snare that I got when I was in 10th grade that I still have and I still use. It's amazing.
Is it the little bronze one?
No. It's the steel.
Okay.
3.5.
Okay.
Free floater piccolo. But I used that snare and I had like a ping ride playing like, quiet jazz in like a local restaurant, like my freshman year, sophomore year in college.
Yeah.
And eventually started getting, better gear. So, but yeah, the CB700 is in my attic to this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, cool. Why don't we kind of jump back? I don't really know. I know you, through Pearl and just through being around town, and I don't really know your whole backstory. I know you're from Memphis and you've been here now for over 15 years, 20 years?
No, I've been here since 99.
99, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've seen all the change and all the traffic, right?
Yeah. Having made that trek back and forth from Nashville to Murfreesboro back then, that straight road can get hypnotic.
Yes.
But now with the traffic, I had to go out there last week for rehearsal, and I was dreading it because I haven't made that drive in so long. I'm not used to it anymore, and I don't want to get used to it.
Yeah.
But it's so much traffic. But having seen the change, I personally kind of welcome it. It has its cons with traffic congestion being the problem. That's a solvable problem, with infrastructure.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's so many people moving here, for me, since it started, I've said over and over that I'm glad that people are moving here in the music industry, particularly because it opens the industry up more.
Yeah, I've always felt that too. I mean, from a day to day, it's obviously it's easy to just say, "Oh, it sucks. It's so crowded."
Sure.
But I moved here for music, and most of us did. And we want the city to be vibrant and have an influx of new ideas and new cultures and.
Both of those.
Yeah.
Both of those, 100%. Cultural differences, diversity, and musical. And it makes Nashville the diverse city that it always claimed to be.
Right.
It's actually following through. Whether it wants to or not is irrelevant, but it's following through. And
wait, not that's diverse.
Right. Exactly. So it's, but the music, we have a jazz club, that was a big feat, when we got that. It was that was a big win, I should say. And
do you remember what year that was?
Rudy's open, was it 2018? I believe 17, 18.
Yeah.
Somewhere around in there, I believe.
Wow. Right as I was arriving. That's awesome.
They will correct me on that. I can't remember. But yeah, when it opened, it was a big deal because prior to that, the closest thing we had was the Nashville Jazz Workshop. But because it was a school, it wasn't a full-time venue. They could only do so much, but it helped to kind of carry us over until Rudy's open. They had other places that would feature, improvisational music, other venues that would, so to speak, allow it, but it wasn't the source of that venue like Rudy's is. That was a big win for Nashville. And they've had some really nice people, our acts come through and play there. And then, of course, we have a larger venue like City Winery. That is a very open venue where they actually kind of, at least at the time, I don't know what the latest is there now, but at the time, there was a gentleman I was working there with who sought to get everything out of the Nashville norm.
Right.
So all things sonically creative, stylistically improvisational, things that are just different. That was one of his goals. Kind of like how this history of Exit In is, if I'm not mistaken. That was their mission as well, to not do country,
that makes sense.
To do everything other than. So yeah, it's been great watching the change and seeing these different people move here and still moving here. Somebody texted me today that, "Oh man, I'm just moving here, man. Let's grab some coffee." And I'm like, all right, cool. That to me is what it's about. And if anyone is complaining about it, it's just one of those things that you have to know within yourself. Do I want to do the work, or did I just want to just sit? Because people are going to call who they are going to call. There's nothing you can do to stop that.
Right.
So if you have someone that consistently calls you, but then someone moves to town, because this happened to me as well back in 99, 2000.
Yeah.
Someone new moves to town, you have a new sound, they start calling you instead of the other person. Well, if you are no longer getting that call, no point in you getting mad at that other drummer.
Right.
That drummer didn't do anything to you.
It just exists.
It's just who are you mad at, the person that called him or the drummer?
Yeah,
you
don't
know
hit
what
the
I mean?
player, hit the game. But
Yeah.
in this case, don't even hit the game, but adapt.
Just
if you want to be in the
adapt,
game,
yeah.
you have to
refine
or do
up your
something.
game,
I love that mindset.
Modernize it and stay with it and, and find a niche,
Yeah.
Try to find one. There are definitely drummers who have moved to town where, if I were in that same mindset of these other guys, I would cringe, knowing that, at the time when Keith Carlock moved to town or when Nate Smith moved to town and big influencers of mine, you know, people who I look up to, and people like Paul Mayberry, you know, when I see his posts, I'm like, golly, his sounds are just incredible.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, and there are several other people that have moved here from New York. One of my close friends, Terrence, who lives in Memphis still, out touring with Keith Urban, you know, got that connection from putting in the work, driving back and forth to Nashville to Memphis. Never really committed to move here, but I thought that was a big win because it's like, no, you shouldn't. I mean, if you can make that connection and keep your roots where you are, why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Other people do that. They live in New York or LA and they come to Nashville to do sessions for country artists,
Yeah.
but they live other places. So, I mean, it's
as long as you're perceived as being present,
Yeah.
you can win. Like that's the whole thing
Totally.
here. You must be present to win. And people, they just, I see them around. They're always they live here. Give them a call.
Sure. Absolutely, man. So, you know, do your thing and be okay with it, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
So, okay, you said you came here in 99, right?
Sure.
Okay, and you've kind of been a part of or at least present for all of the changes. And as you said, like the Rudy's opening up was a big win.
Mhm.
So when you came here initially, because I know your background is not like country music.
Sure.
And stuff. So what was that like for you? Because for me personally, I got to come here when I knew things were kind of cosmopolitan. I'm like, yeah, there's a jazz scene there, and there are like metal bands and things like that I can jump into. Because everyone asked me, oh, so you're gonna do country music now? No, I don't think so. I don't plan to.
Right.
But you were in it when that's what was going on. What was it? What was in your mind? What was your plan?
So, no, it wasn't a plan for sure. I mean, when I got here, I came for MTSU, for Middle Tennessee. And so at that time, I don't think I really even had an ambition to really stay in Nashville. After I did the Disney Collegiate Band my freshman year out in California, I wanted to go there. But at that time, tuition out of state, undergrad, way up there. So ended up coming back. And when I graduated, I went on the road and started working with non-country people. You know, Warren Barfield, CCM at the time, and then straight from that gig to Donna Summer's gig to Billy Preston to Larry Carlton. So I wasn't doing country, but I thought like, oh man, I could stay here. I'm doing this type of work in Nashville. You know, Nashville is the only place where it's known for one genre of music, intentionally, but it's known for country music, you know, and the other two major music places are not known for one thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think it's great, once again, you know, to have seen the evolution of Nashville and the music evolve into what it is. Still has some growth for sure. But I think that with that change, when people come to Nashville, like you said that people thought that you were going to do country. Now, I did do 2 country tours. I did Lady Antebellum and a guy named Chuck Wicks, and had a blast, you know. But it's one of those where it's like, cool, I come in, I play, I meet some new friends who I'm still friends with to this day. Slim Gamble, guitar player, played some shows with him recently, and we stayed in contact. Bunch of people in there. And I think when we started looking at music more as a connectivity thing versus a genre, it kind of helps people's minds being open instead of being so cliquish.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
You'll be at Rudy's and Casey Musgraves will be there, you know, just hanging. You know, it's like you'll have songwriters, incredible songwriters in there just hanging.
Yeah.
You know, and it's having the diverse culture that exists here musically allows for those big writers to come out and be inspired. Jason Eskridge hosted for years, still hosting, Sunday Night Soul.
Yep.
That's an incredible event.
That is an oasis.
Yeah.
When I first moved here and I discovered that, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
not familiar with that.
Yeah, man. It's
Oh,
it's
God.
so it's so worth going to check out, man.
Yeah. Can you
It's
share
always
more about
gonna he's always gonna have good music.
that? Yeah.
You know,
Every time.
every single time.
Yep.
And it's just a hang. It's no nonsense. It's just a really good hang.
Was that once a month or is it once a week? Kind of
Twice a
a
month.
month.
Sunday Night Soul every second and fourth.
I think
I
so,
believe.
yeah. I played it a couple times with Janelle Means. so much fun.
Who's another person. I'll be playing with Soul Vibe next Tuesday
Awesome.
at the Hutton Hotel.
Yeah.
What's the name of the
the
venue up
Analog?
there? The Analog, yeah.
Yeah.
Playing an
I played there
Analog.
once.
They're doing a Gap Band tribute.
Yeah, they are.
So-
She asked me if I could play a couple songs, and I can't. I'm like, I just can't make it work.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I love
Dave,
Janelle, though.
Dave
She's the
Grohl
best.
Gap Band tribute.
Not quite.
Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, you haven't seen that interview? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I think I do.
Where he talks about how he stole that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
That
yeah.
one
Black,
intro to-
black, black,
yeah.
black, boom,
So,
boom.
Like you can't unhear it once you've heard it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but everybody, there's definitely some conversations to be had within like being inspired versus straight ripping.
Yeah.
It's such an ambiguous thing
Yeah.
in certain ways, but I do appreciate hearing stories like that.
Yeah.
Like Bonham, Moby Dick drum solo being basically a Max Roach
Right.
drum
Mhm.
solo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
And so like knowing that a lot of those drummers got their ideas from not so popular genres.
Right. They were just loving it because Bottom was like obsessed with all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I just want to do that, but in this music.
Right.
Yeah, I
That's-
love that. And especially genres that you think would be seemingly opposite to.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's even more surprising.
Yep. So anyway, that was a big detour. Sorry.
No,
No,
we're all about the detours,
Yeah.
especially me.
I really like that mindset of like not being so bucketed of the genres, but just being open-minded to the community here and the musicians here. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about Nashville. That is how it is, you know,
Yeah.
like I think that's how people are going to be successful with that mindset.
Yeah.
So talk to us, just kind of go back to MTSU. Who'd you study with, and like how was your time there? How did that kind of like, you know, lead to where you are now?
So at MTSU, I studied with Lalo Davila.
Yeah, I was gonna.
I studied with
I love
him,
Lalo.
and I studied a lot of drum set stuff from a guy named Andy Smith.
Yeah.
And
No, Andy.
and so those are the two main drum percussion instructors that I studied with. Outside of that, you know, Dana Landry over the jazz department, Don Alico, Eric Applegate. And then I changed my major from music over to recording industry.
Mhm.
So I was under Cosette Collier, Dan Pfeiffer.
What sort of
Rich
triggered
Barnett.
that change for you?
Lalo, man. Like he had a good sit down talk with me one day and he was like, man, I think you need to switch your major over because you don't really want like playing Yellow After the Rain was just kind of like,
Yeah, my
Yeah,
first
four
marimba
mallet
solo,
stuff.
Yeah.
it was just kind of, I mean, and it was good advice. I mean, to segue, I am a big proponent of if you're a student and you're going to college, if you're in high school and you want to go to college to major in music, my question for you is, what do you want to do with your major? Do you want to teach or do you want to play? You know, and that's a big
Yeah.
crossroads,
That's an important
heavy question because colleges don't want to hear my,
Right.
you know, my solution.
Yep.
and parents are appreciative of it because it comes down to like ones and zeros to me.
Yeah.
It's like I have not been asked for my degree for any session or gig that I've ever done,
Yeah.
except to teach at a university. That's the only time that that piece of paper mattered. And now, did I gain anything from being a music major or at least a music minor? Yeah, I gained the camaraderie, friends,
Yeah.
and participating in the ensembles. That was great. Reading was a big thing. Could have done that with just private lessons instead of majoring in it. I'm a proponent personally. If a student is enrolling into a university, you need to at least, if you're going to be a music major for the sake of making a career, you need to take some kind of entrepreneurship course because
I love
that's
that,
essentially what you are becoming
Yes.
is an entrepreneur. So you need to know business, not music business per se. You need to know like plain old business.
Yeah.
You are your own small business
Yes.
at that point.
And you need to know how to negotiate. You need to know what your time is worth, how to value your time, and think about like part of my curriculum. I mean, I teach at Belmont adjunct there, and part of my juries is that you have to basically answer these questions. Because for me, if you've been playing all semester, I've heard you play. Part of what you have to play, I do give you some book exercises, some PDF stuff for coordination things. But with that, you have to learn 1 or 2 songs a week. So when you come back in the following week, you have to play those songs, but not along with the iPod. You have to play it by yourself, sing the melody, and play, because what that's going to do, and you may not know the words, that's fine. But what that's going to do is that you're going to know the form of the song because you know the melody. You're going to know the tempo of the song because you know the melody. And you're not going to overplay because you can't.
Right.
You're too focused on the melody, and now you're going to play in between the spots, which is usually the end of a phrase, play a fill going back in, but you're going to be careful about the fill that you play, based on, does the melody have a pickup going in there? And how are you going to like do both at the same time? So it's kind of threefold with, making them do that and not having that crutch of like playing along with the iPod.
Yeah.
So if I mess up, the iPod got me.
Right.
No
training wheels.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
Right. You have to do it on your own. So once you go through all semester doing those exercises, PDFs, and whatever genre you decide, I make like 4 or 5 different syllabi to pick from for world music, Latin, R&B, jazz, technical stuff, if you want to go down that path. But you still have, even in the technical stuff, you still have songs to learn.
Yeah.
And so by the end of
probably.
Yeah.
so by the end of the semester, I've heard you play all semester. So I'm not going to make you play for a jury.
Mm-hmm.
If you couldn't play all semester, you still can't play. If
Right.
you could play, you can still play. I want to know what you charge for a gig. I want to know what your time is worth. So when somebody
so cool.
asks you a question, hey, can you play this gig? It's okay to ask, what does it pay? So like you have to just be mindful of what you say yes to. There was a video that I saw on Instagram, Charlamagne the God. He had this guy on there who said, no is important because yes is expensive. And that instantly changed my life, hearing it put in such simple terms. And so for these students, you say yes to a $50 gig, that's 3 hours. Once you say yes, it's going to be hard to negotiate up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, say, I can do it for this time. If you, the player, feels like that gig could be a connection to something else.
Right.
If you don't feel like it's going to connect to something else, if you're just doing it for $50, make sure that your soul isn't going to be hurting when you do the gig. Because if it is, you're better off just like maybe driving Uber just for a day or something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such great advice. We've had this exact conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm relatively new to town and I'm not drumming full time like Nate is, but I'm having to go through that when I meet different artists and songwriters, and they're not all offering $50, but it's like I have to have that kind of that mindset. And
Yeah.
it's like if I say yes, then it's got to lead to something.
Yeah.
Or like negotiate your rate too. Don't be afraid to.
Yeah. Just tell them like this is, or if somebody says, what do you charge? And state your fee.
Yeah.
Say,
and don't be embarrassed about it.
Don't be embarrassed about it.
Like, hey, man, I'm sorry, but this is, there's no reason to be sorry.
I mean, if $200 is your rate, say it. If $500 is your rate, say it. If $1,500, you just be able to back it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Better be able to back it up. And if they say, well, we can't pay that, then you can say, okay, well, what can you do? Now the ball is in their court.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say $50, at least they know what your target thing is. And so if you say yes to that, they still know what you value your time as. Say yes, crush it.
Yeah.
And then if they call you again, they know what your price is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when you make your value tangible and audible, where they hear like, oh yeah, he does sound like $1,500. He does sound like $500 or whatever your number is. But if you just settle, then it's
I feel
hard.
like over time you will actually start to attract, like you're going to attract the clients for the price that you set.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the clients that will pay $200 for a gig versus the $50. You probably don't want to be doing the $50, gigs anyway.
You'd be amazed at when you say no, how something immediately will come right up.
Yeah.
I mean, case in point, it wasn't a no, but like my transition from playing with the CCM artist to playing with Donna Summer, like he called me up and he said, hey, I got to make some changes, blah, 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 and like I had a calendar full of dates with him. And I was like, oh, okay. So that gig ended. 3 days later is when I got the call to play with Donna. which paid substantially more.
Right.
Fewer dates, but the fewer dates paid more than all of his would have paid. And when I say fewer, I mean like 15 dates, 5 dates.
Wow.
So not riding in a van, not roommating, having a bus, your own gear, your own 5-star hotel, room.
Entirely different weight class.
Completely different, So, but all of that said, when things happen, it's an opportunity for something else to come your way, not a detriment per se.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for young drummers to hear.
Yeah,
I think you get so pressured, especially when you move into a new city like Nashville.
Sure.
It's like you want to be known, you want to become a name, so you start saying yes to everything, and you play for free and do all those gigs, and then you wonder why like you're not really advancing your career. It's like maybe you just rethink that mindset of the gigs you are saying yes to.
And there's some wisdom in saying yes to everything when you're brand new. When you're totally an unknown quantity, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll jump into this just because I'm putting myself out in. But there's a point when you have to go, okay, now I'm tapering that back off. And then Derek Sivers, maybe you heard this one. I think he made CD Baby.
Okay.
But he said you want to get to the point where if it's not hell yes, it's no.
Right.
You want everything you're doing to be like, yes,
Yeah.
hell yes, I'm doing this. I'm all in.
Yeah.
Great.
Because that yes is expensive.
Right. I
You're
love that.
You're going to put all of your effort in. If you're going to put half your effort in it, don't bother saying yes, because you're going to do a disservice to yourself and to the other client as well.
Yeah.
Because you are going to, your attitude, everything is going to be just kind of very lackluster.
Yeah.
And it's hard, admittedly, there's still certain gigs that I have done that, admittedly, but I am aware of it, and I'm trying to like pull back even more on those yeses so that when I do say yes to something, I feel good about it.
Right.
And I know that I'm going to go in with a good attitude versus begrudgingly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a good practice to start. The moment you start to feel like, I don't really want to do this anymore, stop.
Yeah.
Please stop, because that will allow the other client to find someone else, or you can help them find someone. You don't have to burn a bridge.
Right.
It's not about that. It's about keeping that bridge together, because you never know what's going to happen later. So keep that bridge intact if you can, and move on to something else.
Yeah. It's not that hard to do.
No, it's not that hard to do. It's just people value sometimes the wrong relationships. And that's just in general beyond music. And you stay in that relationship when you know it's time to move on, and you don't. And you end up feeling weighted.
Right.
And then people can't discern between like, oh, I want to call this person because they're my friend and I want them to play on this, but I know this person plays this better and with the sound that I want.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so you have to make that decision on like, do I go with the friend or do I go with the music? Which one is your North Star?
Yeah.
Your friend or the music? Because the friend isn't the product. Music is a product.
Right.
So it's just one of those things where you have, and it's been like, there have been several times where I've wanted to play with certain people, but they called a better drummer for the gig. And I'm glad they didn't call me, because I wouldn't want them upset with me if it didn't come out the way they wanted, which is also, again, why I'm glad that there are so many musicians moving to town, because now you can be more specific with your sound instead of being so general with your sound, having to fit all of these different things. Now you can kind of like tighten your scope a little bit.
I don't think I'd ever thought of it that way, to be grateful that someone else got the gig, because essentially that allows you to keep your reputation pristine.
Yeah.
If you're playing just this, like, I know I can kill it on this. I know I'm going to come in and I'm just going to ace this thing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's cool. Yeah, I agree with that.
I wanted to ask, unless you have something you wanted to jump into.
Go for it, yeah.
So the first time, I've actually met you several times. Now, you probably don't remember. The very first time I met you was at a little show in Cottonwood in California, or rather Anderson. You were playing with Monty Montgomery.
Oh, wow. I don't remember that. But
Yeah.
I mean, Monty, that's my guy, man. I like that guy.
Yeah.
He's so much fun.
Yeah, he's fun and he's a monster. There was a guy in the audience playing a harmonica, and he told him to shut the fuck up, which was great, because everybody felt the same. Like, why Why do you think you can do this?
I guarantee you, David Piggott and I were probably just like cracking up laughing at it.
It's killing me. But yeah, I met you just briefly then. Then I played a show at Rudy's, and I was playing, and I saw you walk in. I was like, that's Marcus. That guy's awesome. And I felt pretty good about how I played that night. And I actually posted about this just the other day. I think you saw. I'm like, yeah, cool. I was swinging pretty good tonight. Yeah. And then you got up, you set up, and you just sound checked for about 5 seconds. And I went, well, that's too bad.
Yeah, you have that effect.
So that was the night where my band played? Or was
Yeah.
I playing with somebody?
You were playing. I can't remember who you were playing
Was
with.
that the clip that you posted?
No, but that, I mean, it was definitely,
Okay.
It was a relevant
Gotcha.
clip to what I had experienced. But you just played a little swing for like literally 5 seconds, and I went, oh, I have so much work to do.
You thought you had a good set.
Yeah, it was like, got to rethink the whole night.
I can go down a list of drummers who have made me feel the exact same way.
Well, it's funny because,
we want to hear that list.
Talk about that in a minute, actually, because when I met you that first night, I was like, I told you I'd seen you online somewhere, and you were like, "Did you see that video of me playing with Chris Coleman?" And I was like, "Yeah." You're like, "He murdered me."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, that's what he does to everybody."
Yeah.
So like, it's not,
He's the Punisher, man.
He's just.
But it's like a genuinely sweet cat, man.
He is like the nicest guy.
Yeah,
who will just
yeah.
absolutely.
But
make
we'll
you rethink
annihilate
your
you.
life. Yeah. There's no exceptions to that rule. But I wanted to ask you, what is it that, if you can quantify it in somewhat brief in this podcast time, maybe it's something where you're like, we'd have to talk for 5 hours a day for like a year before I could understand. What is it that makes the difference in that kind of feel? What is it that makes it feel so genuine? I instantly recognized how deep your swing was, like how good your feel was, how ridiculously like precise your touch was. And how do you develop that?
You have to think of music the same way you think of speaking. There are many people who have talked about this, Victor Wooten being one of them. It's so relevant. The way you speak, you have an identity. You have a voice. Whether you cared for it or not, you have a voice. When you hear it back on a recording, you're like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
But like now I'm going to sound like I'm like
That's how
stuffy.
I feel about this podcast every time.
But you have a voice. You have a particular pattern of speaking. There's certain words that you inflect, certain words you kind of let roll off. If I were to try to imitate your voice on a podcast or over the phone where people couldn't see me, people would go like, sounds like him, but I don't know. Who is this? So your identity kind of gets lost because you're trying to emulate so many different people that your own voice kind of gets creatively hoarse. It's like you're stretching it so far and you don't let your own voice muscles develop into its own thing. And you have a regional sound, certain accents from West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, Southern drawl, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even in the South, there are so many different ones from Alabama to Georgia, Texas, South Carolina, Nashville, Kentucky. I mean, it's like there's very specific sounds that come out of those mouths. And so when you think of music in terms of speaking, nobody can imitate you. It's your voice. And so when you learn a particular vernacular, like if you say, I'm from the South, so that's just how I talk wherever I go.
Right.
And where are you from originally?
California,
right.
Yeah.
So from California, highly unlikely that you're going to develop a Southern accent.
Right.
You know what I mean? You may pick up on some things, maybe for survival's sake, but but
there are a few things I've adapted. I don't use, sometimes on purpose I'll still use you guys rather than y'all.
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's just because I'm being obstinate.
Right. And intentionally, and there are certain words that I over enunciate here that I didn't grow up talking like.
Yeah.
Because of traveling overseas and traveling to other states. I didn't want anybody to tease me because of my Southern accent. Oh, you're from the South. You're from Memphis. It's like, first of all, we don't talk like that from Memphis. But you just get to a place where your own sound and what you excel at, whether it's a topic of discussion, for example, what we're talking about, we're talking about music. If we talk about food, like I love talking about food, clearly, but you think about the style of swing. It's like that's something that I also love to do. I love just the creative aspect of it. There's so many types of swing. It's just like there's so many types of pizza. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many different ways of like cooking chicken. So many, you know what I mean? So you take a food as a genre and how many ways within that genre the swing sound.
Yeah, that's a great parallel.
And so you know the ingredient, you know the essence of what it is because you've listened to multiple things. You didn't lock in just on one person.
Right.
You locked in on the style of the language, the vernacular of what it means to play what we call jazz. For me, from Art Blakey, Buddy Rich, Elvin, Tony, Tane Watts, into modern guys, Brian Blade, Greg Hutchison, Ulysses Owens, Jameson Ross, Nate Smith. I mean, like, you can go on and on, you know, Justin Brown. You know,
Justin is one of my favorite players on the planet.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different people who you hear their voice. And you can say it's from the ride cymbal, you can say it's from the sound, but like even if you switch out you know, the gear, it still sounds like them. Harvey Mason, one time, I was playing this festival in Spain and we had to share a kit for one particular show. And after I played the kit, I got up, he sat down to play it. This is the first time this has ever happened to me because I've shared a kit several times with people and it sounded like the same kit, just sounded like a different player. This sounded like a completely different drum set because I was behind the curtain, I couldn't see, and I thought he swapped some gear around, like snare and like toms, and I peeked back out and it was like, he's playing the same damn things that I was just playing.
Wow.
And it sounds completely different.
Yep.
And that blew my mind. And I didn't understand how he was doing it. Still don't, but I know that now when I play, I'm more focused on trying to find where's the optimal sound on this drum, on this cymbal. How do I, and because a lot of shows that I have done over the last 15 years have been backline shows, fly dates. I just travel with sticks. I don't even travel with cymbals most of the time. So I have a rider and I say specifically what I want and I show up and sometimes it's what you want, sometimes it's not. Right. And you just have to adapt and try to find like, okay, how do I make this work? And with that, you kind of like, your ears open up, I feel even more, at least mine have.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say that I've used the same gear all the time to have a fair and balanced argument on that. I know my gear at home, I guess that is an argument. But, you know, using different gear in different places has helped me to explore and find different things and learning how to tune drums in certain venues that are different drums, different heads, and you're like trying to figure out how do I make this sound good in here?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, your voice, your ability to adapt, you sound different when you play with different people. That's a big thing. It's a huge thing. Certain people that you start narrowing your list of players after your ears start to hear what you sound like. And a person that helped me with that was Kev Mo. He is a big proponent of like listening beyond what we typically say is listening. Like he is listening to each item that's being played in the kit, each person, each part being played. He's listening through the ears of a producer, not just a stage show. So he's looking for everybody to like have a lane and a part, you know, stick to that. And it's a little regiment, but it frees you up at the same time because you know your lane.
Yes.
You know, you're never searching. Yeah. You know what you have to come back to at all times. So that said, like, you know, I use an app called Live BPM, which kind of measures transients and tells you the tempo that you're playing. I use that live 90% of the time because I am trying to figure out what is my tempo. Like if it says 90 BPM, if I know the song is supposed to be 90, it's not a click track, but I have to feel 90 myself. But then when you play with certain people will maybe play ahead of you. Certain people may play center of you. Certain people play behind you, depending on how they feel it. That's where the drummer's feel starts to almost be compromised and ambiguous at the same time. Because if you were to take out everybody out of a track and you're playing, the click is there, but you mute the click and you just hear you playing, you may sound fine. But then when you start adding in the players, depending on where they're playing, may make you sound like you're playing on top or behind, because the ear a lot of times gravitates to the harmonic instruments before it gravitates to the drums. And people sometimes don't even realize that. You're playing on stage, count off a song at the tempo that you know it's supposed to be, and you're playing by yourself, and then everybody comes in and starts to like pull back, and you have to like make a decision. Do I keep barreling? This is why I don't like playing with a click by myself, because if I'm the only one that hears it and everybody else doesn't hear it,
that's true.
then it starts to become like the whole, as I say, you end up becoming Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer instead of Santa Claus. Like I'd rather be anchoring, than pulling.
So in that situation, have you turned the click off?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But at the same time, it's like, when you feel that you can't settle back to where they are either, you just have to kind of like be an amoeba. You know what I mean? You have to be a lava lamp and like just kind of mold around until y'all find it collectively. It's not about chopping them over.
Right. Like, oh, well, you said it was 90 and I played a 90. So
it's not about being right.
It's like, no, it's like serve the artist, serve the band.
Right.
And that's our job.
And, and even that serve the artist, serve the band, there's some gray area with that.
Sure.
There is.
For me, there is, because it's like there are some things we can't quantify. Like, what is the tempo? Is a tempo 90? Is the key of the song B flat? All right, let's try to keep it around 90, give or take 1 or 2 BPM. But, if I stop playing for like 8 bars, what's going to happen?
Right.
Is it going to go down to 85? Or are you going to like, where's it going to be? So everybody has a strong part in keeping that time happening. Playing big band, that's another one. With a big band, you have to be lockstep. You have a co-partner, which is a bass player. And if you have a guitar player in a big band, they are also really important, because that ride cymbal can only do so much, and that hi-hat is just a very high-pitched transient. It doesn't drive anything to me. Yeah. What drives is the upright. And what drives is if you have Freddie Green type guitar player playing, quarter notes, people hear that. Just like people hear acoustic guitar. When an acoustic guitar starts playing in anywhere downtown, anywhere in Nashville, people's ear, especially they go, oh, the guitar player is right, no matter what the drummer is doing.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Because the guitar player, it's a guitar player, so they have to be right.
Right.
But you have to like find that special place. Monty Montgomery, he would take off, if you weren't careful. And so I had to like find my place playing with somebody like him who kind of lives on the edge, with his stuff. But then you get somebody like Larry Carlton, who is kicked back in a recliner. The way he's playing, everything is incredibly fierce, but where he places it relative to the drums is just on the backside of it. Kirk Whalum, saxophone player, same, like incredible time, but he will play just on the backside of where you are for feel, say.
Right.
So it's all one of those, it's relative, Kev Moe, he has a place where he would play. Everybody has a specific place they feel it. And the way to kind of determine it, I think, is just to have a drum machine play and let them play to that and see where if you want to get to the nuts and bolts of like, where's your feel? Because you're not going to argue with this drum machine.
Right.
So
is that tempo wrong? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've always said that too.
You go in the back corner there and you guys duke it out.
Yeah. Nobody argues with the stems. But if the drummer is the only one hearing the stems, they'll argue with the drummer.
Yeah. Whenever I've played with some artists, especially downtown, where like it's faster than this, I go, here's the tempo. We can play it faster if that's what you want, but it isn't faster than this.
Right.
It is this tempo.
It's not that key. Oh, yes, it is that key. Yeah. I can't sing it that fast. Well, say that.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. I get that. So, I mean, that happened recently. We were playing a song and I started it at the tempo. It was a cover tune. Yeah. And singer turned around like, whoa, guys, this is like blazing fast. It's like too fast. I said, okay, well, play it. You have the guitar. Play it where you want. and he played it like 7 clicks slower. And I said, okay. And I had the live BPM on. I was like, all right, we'll put it there.
Yeah.
No problem. And then he asked, like, was that the record tempo? I was like, record tempo is where we had it. But this is like, if this is where you want it,
I've been in that situation.
That's fine. Yeah.
it's totally fine. But don't jump out of your pants saying like, hey, this is too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Don't be mad at me for knowing the song.
I need to attenuate your tone.
Yeah.
Attenuate your tone.
Need you to low pass that.
Yeah. I'm keeping that one.
That should be a
Putting
t-shirt.
Yeah. Attenuate your tone.
So,
Man, it's cool hearing like your story of watching him play. I feel like I had the same thing happen to me. I think I've only seen you once, which is crazy. I need to come out and see you more. But it was at Wind Down Nashville.
Okay.
Last year.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
with,
Jerome.
Was that with the Marcus Finnie band?
Well, it was like a trio. It was
Okay.
an adaptation.
Yeah.
That group, we played together at Rudy's, but we just played some of my music that particular
Yeah.
night. But yeah, guitar and organ and drums.
Yeah.
That was the first time doing my stuff with that setup.
That was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Played, I think I had a kick snare hat, or did I have a cajon too?
Yeah, he was something unique. I remember talking to you about it after.
I think I sat on a cajon, but had a kick, snare, hat, and a ride.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was playing a combination of, it was like made up that night, that day. But we had fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of I see you as like a Dennis Chambers or a Chris Coleman, someone like a drummer that we can just watch for like an hour. Just the drummer playing and just be so entertained the whole time. That's kind of how
That's
I
true.
felt with your playing. It's just so interesting.
Thank you. I
know,
appreciate
just
that.
Very unique. And maybe kind of go into that. We kind of touched upon some of your favorite influences and drummers, but I guess like who are you listening to now? Who are your current influences?
I mentioned Nate Smith. His latest record is incredible. And I dig a lot of the stuff that Snarky has done. You know, the sound that they brought.
Larnell and
Big sound.
Sput.
And
Jameson.
Jameson and JT.
Yeah.
Jason Thomas.
Yeah.
It's like you got 4 incredible drummers, sometimes all playing at the same time, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like 3 of them at least playing at the same time, but never stepping on each other. Everything is so detailed with that group. You have to be when you got like 97 people playing.
Yeah.
You know, it's Michael League is, I admire what he's done heavily, you know. And some other people, I just find playlists on Apple Music or Spotify, and I just listen to what the latest playlist is of certain things. And some of the stuff that comes up, man, I'm like, obviously JD Beck and Domi, they have their album out. Anderson, you know, just as a drummer, Anderson is cold-blooded.
Oh,
yeah, he is. He's
go off.
he's real
You know
good.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, his feel.
Yeah, his feel, but also his chops are like freaking amazing. So it's kind of all over the place with that. One thing that I do is I find playlists. This is the one thing I like about Spotify. One is that people will curate playlists. So you type in Jeff Porcaro session tracks, or you type in Roger Hawkins or Bernard Purdy, any session studio drummer. You type in their name, Spotify, and you type in their name and playlist. A long list of songs pop up. And it's a good way to me to study the identity of a player across albums, across decades, across genres, mixes, sonic, everything. It's just like you hear them. You know what I mean?
I need to see if they've got
cool.
one for Gary Novak. I've been on a Gary kick.
I'm pretty sure they do. And he is, again, another one of those amazing cats, man. And an amazing person, man. I got to hang with him a couple times. And just a funny dude, man. Seriously bad cat.
He's scary.
And what's my other guy's name? He played with Larry for a minute. Looks very animated. Tosh Panos.
Okay.
Another one, man. That's like incredible, you know? But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. I've gone down the path of like listening to specific drummers, or if I on those jazz playlists or top pop playlists, Billie Eilish, I like her stuff, you know, The Weeknd, Dua Lipa,
Yeah.
you know, I just dig some of this stuff that's out there. I got a country playlist to try to like hear sonically what's going on drum sound wise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a lot of the same stuff. A lot of it is samples, of course. Just with everything, a lot of stuff is sampled. It's not just country. but just to hear kind of what it is and see if anything has changed pattern-wise. A lot of it is the same, but that's just the nature of, it's not to be frowned upon. I used to frown on it. People will certainly tell you that. But I used to frown on, like, you're doing the same old thing over and over and over again. Well, one of my favorite drummers is definitely a proponent of playing the same solos over and over again, and it always works.
Yeah.
Steve Gadd.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing. And I never get tired of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can start that. I'm like, I'm falling over. You know what I mean?
Yep.
His feel, because everything he plays is committed. And so I think a lot of times we kind of overlook that. Circling back to everything we've talked about, the commitment of what you play is going to reign supreme over any lick that you play.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
You know what I mean? So if you're committed to that one hit, like I Will Always Love You, Ricky Lawson, when he hits that boom, and when he hits that, the commitment behind it, that's like one hit.
Yeah.
And it's like,
iconic.
yeah,
Yeah.
takes your breath away. And
Having that conviction.
having a conviction, James Gadsden,
Oh
his
my
16th note grooves, you know what I mean? Jeff Porcaro. It's like you can go down a list of names and it's Steve Jordan. Any drummer named Steve, just about. Steve Ferroni, it's like the commitment that they have is what makes it, there's no question mark over their head. It's just an exclamation point at all times. No matter the volume, Art Blakey, definitely 100% committed in everything that he played. Dynamics. I will say, like, I got into Art later, and by later, I mean like 20 years ago. Art, what I love about his playing is he was a piano player first. So, he has incredible chops, but it never got in the way of the song. He's a very unique drummer from that era where, they'll be burning something and his ride cymbal will be like super low playing, and then all of a sudden he will like come out of nowhere and like throw the kitchen sink at you and then come right back down.
Yeah.
So stealth, with everything that he does, those press rolls. And then when he goes into he's another one. He'll play almost the same type of drum solo. Like play a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Never get tired of it because he's completely 100% committed.
Yeah. And also what you were saying, like to find your lane and find your niche. Like those drummers that you mentioned, like they become known for those things, and that's like why. Why change or why fix what's not broken kind of thing.
Right. Vinny is one of the anomalies, man. Like, because he's known for constantly evolving. He has a sound because of that, but you're not going to pinpoint a lick.
Right. Yeah.
You're just not, Herbie Hancock, he has certain voicings that you're like, oh, that sounds like a Herbie chord. But you're going to be hard pressed to find him repeating himself.
That's true.
Certain people have just this ceiling that they don't know where the ceiling is.
Yeah.
I can see mine. I walk slightly, hunched over because of the ceiling. But
yeah.
It's one of those things, man, where you have the commitment. You find your favorite words that you like to use in a conversation. You bring it up when you're talking to somebody. You're not Neil deGrasse Tyson, who may have like this incredible vocabulary. Like if you ask Neil deGrasse Tyson, like, hey man, how's the light bulb work? He can look at you and assess, like, I can either give him all the big words or I can help him understand.
Right.
And which one is more important, me flexing my words or this person who asked a question understanding?
Yeah, those are the best teachers.
Yeah.
To figure that out.
Yeah. So, I think of music the same way in certain ways. It's like, you can give them like all of your chops, or you can wow them with a word or two, but then still make sure they're with you.
Yes.
And a person who, again, I'm gonna say his name probably for the fourth, fifth time, Nate Smith, is like incredible with that.
Yes,
like I've been to one of his shows and was blown completely away by his ability to put the audience in the palm of his hand. And they'll be playing an odd meter thing, but he's grooving it super hard. And then his ability to stop for 2 counts and then drop back in resets that audience's like their endorphins, their like everything, like their adrenaline just like pops out in those 2 bars of space, and it kind of resets it. So he's one of those. Victor Wooten is really incredible with like just the weight that he makes you wait for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's an art to that, but it also goes along with how you speak, you know, how you communicate, because this music is communication.
Yeah, that's great.
What's that you said? You want to learn how to play drums, but you don't know where to begin? Let me humbly suggest to you that you head on down to Music Lab Nashville and you talk to their crew of fantastic teachers, and you jump on in and start your music journey right there. Don't want to learn drums? Want to learn guitar, ukulele, mandolin, trumpet, vocals, keys, sitar? Maybe not sitar, but all the other stuff for sure. Visit nashville.musiclab.co to learn more and sign up for a free trial lesson.
So you mentioned the word identity a few times. Definitely want to talk about your new record that came out, a few weeks ago now?
Came out actually Friday.
Okay.
It was released on Bandcamp, and it's just a single.
So July 15th, right?
Yeah, it was.
By the time this airs, so we'll reference back to it.
Well, it was released on Bandcamp 15th, but the 29th is when it actually released on like streaming.
Oh, perfect.
So,
cool.
But yeah, I was trying to like direct everybody to Bandcamp. And yeah, that song, ironically, I recorded in 2015.
Okay.
Got the guys together. We went to Sony Tree and recorded there. Doug Mosier on saxophone, Brian Allen on bass, and Jason Webb on piano. Jason is known a lot around town as being a session piano player. He's not known as a jazz player, and I kind of hate to even qualify people in that way. Like, he's a jazz guy, because I don't like being qualified that way personally. But, he's such a great player, and clearly on this project, man, on this song, he played his butt off. That was the first song that I've ever written, actually. I wrote it in 2004 or 2005. And I was using Reason to write it. And I started with a legal pad of just rhythms. And I wrote the title Identity. I wrote 3/4. And I just wrote measures, A, B, C, D. And just wrote rhythms for every line. No pitch, no key, no nothing. And went in to Reason and started programming just a bass line figure. And I would have to like do a step entry because I don't play piano. So I would write out the bass line for 1 bar, 2 bar, and just go on and copy paste if I needed to, and had phrases written. So I have bass line kind of like spelling out one type of thing, got this drum groove playing. Then I program the rhythms for the melody, but it's just like non-pitched. It's just in there. Then I start moving them to pitches based on the bass line. The bass line is spelling out something, so the melody kind of counteracts. And that's kind of how, when you hear the song, it sounds like the bass is its own melody, and the melody from the sax is another thing. So they're happening at the same time. And then because you have the bass and the melody, you can kind of figure out what the chord is supposed to be. And over time, it evolved, playing it live with different people, getting new ideas, and then finally, 10 years later, recorded it. And at first, I was going to wait until I had a full album of that particular sound, but it was taking too long, clearly. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to put this out. But there are other songs that I have ready to record. I have about 5 that I'm ready to record. It's just a matter of getting in there and doing it. So, but Identity, yeah, I'm excited about it. It was playlisted. I know that's kind of a big thing now. It's on a Spotify playlist, all new jazz or something like that. And
was it a playlist you made?
No.
Just to get back to
yeah, no, right. The drummer's playlist.
Yeah, right.
But and then there's a young lady in Europe. Her name is Ruth. I forget her last name, but I'll send you the link to the radio station that she has over in Europe. And she reached out to me about playing it on her station, which I got excited about as
Yeah,
well.
that's
So,
cool.
because I've never really pushed too hard. Like I'll give it a month or two, and then I kind of back off. I'm like, nobody wants to hear it. You know what I mean? And I'm not very diligent about the promotional thing.
It's that tough balance of being the artist and then being like the marketer behind it and trying to, self-promote.
Yeah.
It's always a challenge.
It's very tough.
You have to have enough ego to believe in your product, but then to do that, the counterbalance of that is you believe it will push itself by like, well, it's good, so it should push itself, right?
Right.
Oh, okay, those two things have a hard time coexisting.
That's why you have a creative department and an administrative department.
Yep.
At a label. But like, you just need a team, like a marketing team, and who's going to say, all right, we got that part done. Now you need to do this. And it's like, wait, you want me to make a TikTok video? You know what I mean? It's like, but I mean, that type of stuff, it's all about who you're trying to reach and
know your audience.
Know your audience and communicate with your audience. And it's hard. Like I said, I've been a side guy so long, like the thought of like stepping out into the artistry thing, like beyond the radius of Nashville. I mean, it's just kind of like, I know how I want to travel. Because I know I'm used to traveling a particular type of way. And if I have to step down from that, that's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I definitely want the players playing with me to be comfortable because I know what it's like to be a side guy.
Yes.
And I don't want them to feel like they're a side guy with accommodations and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, and I know there's just some realities that you just have to get over, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. Just like, do you feel like you have a unique perspective of now kind of running your own group and then kind of being more of the artist and the composer from being like the sideman and obviously growing up as a drummer? What do you feel you've kind of taken away from those two different roles?
So I know when I was younger, I definitely wanted to write, but didn't think at that time I could because I wasn't a piano player. It wasn't until I learned MIDI that I was like, maybe I can. And so we all have something we can say. It may not be at many songs, but I'm a proponent, man, of like, do your own stuff. That is one thing that I definitely try to instill in students too. Do your own thing. It's nice to cover stuff.
Yeah.
To do stuff that people know. I want to play something they know. It's like, well, they'll never know your stuff if you don't play it.
Yeah.
So play your stuff. And that song is not making you really any money. You're making that writer money.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, study the writing. Study it. And it's not to say that everybody's going to be a writer. That's, I'm definitely not trying to say that because there are certain people who are just gifted players or gifted performers, or singers. And then there are certain people who are just gifted writers and not singers.
Yeah.
There are certain people who should have just written and never stepped out to sing. Who I can name some, but I won't. Yeah. But there are people who, in my opinion anyway, sometimes we get caught up in how good a song is because of the lyrics, forgetting that person really can't sing. And then there are certain people who are really incredible singers, but you don't realize how bad the song is because you're so enamored by how well they sing.
Yeah.
So, and so it's like both polar opposites, both ends. That's why I say administrative, creative. Mm-hmm. Have a team of writers and performers and co-write, do your thing, be a part of it. Don't shy away from that. But understanding what good writing is comes from studying the greats, studying your Carole Kings, James Taylors, Lionel Richies, Babyface. You can go on and on and on and on. The Bergmans, lyricists, people who are poetic. When you hear the song, you hear poetry. Mm-hmm. Even if you just read it without singing the melody, you just read it and it's like, this is a good story. Yeah. Not every song calls for that. Some songs are just party songs and that's fine. Yeah. Some songs have no lyrics. Some songs are just melody. Like, can you construct a melody that's singable? It's not too out. If it is out, then that's how you feel and that's great, But again, I just say think about honesty and think about okay, is your honesty going to reach, how many people do you think the honesty is going to reach? Bottom line, as long as you're honest, it's just two different paths of thinking on being creative in this industry. One is serving money. The other is serving yourself as honesty. Yeah. And the money comes from I want to reach all the people. It's like, okay, well, are you going to be genuine with them, or are you going to be honest? Are you going to be honest with them, or are you going to just say what
what sells?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So don't Benny Hinnum.
Oh,
Like still be honest, because you're gonna have to live with that.
Yeah.
Later on, you're gonna have to live with that. So that's just kind of where my head is on.
Yeah, I like you said too about having a team, surrounding yourself, having that awareness to, like, especially as drummers, like we don't necessarily have that marketing mindset or like think of ourselves as our brand, to like hire a photographer and get headshots done or cool photos or something like that, or have a website. But that's important.
I mean, and it costs too, man. It's like you have people that will give you a deal, but depending on the quality of marketing that you want, it costs money.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
So, like the making the music is, in theory, the easiest part. It's the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your budget.
All those pieces.
Yeah, it's like 70% of your budget right there is marketing. 30% is doing a record. It's like doesn't take much to go in and play.
Yeah, it's my music. I've for in your case, like you wrote it 10 years ago. You go in, get the guys together, you rehearse, you do it, a few takes, whatever it was, and now how do we tell the world about it in a way that does it justice? How
do you create the wow thing? Yeah. Some people just kind of like, I just want to hide behind. I don't want my face on a thing, and I don't want to say anything about it. Well, why'd you record it? Again, like that's part of the unfortunate piece about the music industry that exists, is this thing of like, if I create it, people will just like it. It's like, name me a single restaurant where that's worked. I mean, like you still have to market. Word of mouth works, to a degree. Like if you were to open a restaurant and didn't tell anybody, you just expect people to just walk in. Nobody knows who you are because you're in the back kitchen. You got somebody else serving the floor. You're not being personable. It's like, but you have incredible food, but nobody knows your story. Nobody knows, And so at that point, it's like the truth of what your intent was kind of comes out. You never wanted to really make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Essentially. You just wanted to create something,
or even serve
just
others.
For the sake of creating something. And you did it, and you spent the money on doing it. You don't want to make it back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like going back to like your guy from CD Baby, like be all in. Yes. Like I'm excited about this. I want to promote this. I want to do this, do it, maybe it's easier said than done, because I know I get the financial piece of it. But like, as far as you being out there, like you had Prince's shirt on, man. It's like, I mean, he was the king of like being mysterious and like when he made an appearance, he made an appearance.
Yeah, he did.
He could be 4 hours late.
Yeah.
He made an appearance, and he was dressed to the nines. You know what I mean? And
doing all these secret gigs.
Yeah.
Showing up last minute when nobody knew, and then just like, Prince is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's doing a gig with the full, they're like, oh my God.
Yeah, man.
What is
and
that?
So it's like people like him and several other people who can like maintain that mystique. And when they show up, it's like, oh man, such and such is here, But like you have to, it doesn't just happen like that. There's still strategy involved. Mm-hmm. And people, I don't know what people are thinking sometimes, but
I think like everything, it's a balance. Because if you're at the other end of the spectrum, like if you're just screaming every day to people,
oh God,
whether it's Instagram posts or
buy my
emails,
music,
then it's like, all right, turn that off. Right?
Yeah,
but it's like if you're someone that's like to that was a great example of Prince. Like if you post maybe once a month, but every time you do, it's like quality content or it's a new release. It's like okay, it's quality over quantity.
Precisely.
I want to talk more about recording, just kind of on that subject. You're definitely known as a session player in town. Specifically, too, like talk about 2020 for you, and because I know I've seen a lot of your content and kind of building the home studio and kind of having to adapt, like we talked about. And
sure,
because I know you record a lot at really great studios here in town and elsewhere, but having how important was that to have your place at your house?
Oh man, that was big time for me. Like it was something that I've been wanting to do anyway. And the pandemic just kind of made it a priority.
So many,
for everybody.
For so many people.
Yeah. It just made it a priority.
About it, was like, all right, now it's being decided for me. I kind of have to do this.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to build it in the attic, but that was going to be like a $25,000 thing. And I was like, well, let me just get all the pieces that I need first, the gear, and just set up in the garage. We have a 2-car garage. I parked on the street. And eventually made like a cube, like a shanty with a little roof. My ceilings are 14 feet high. So once I got room mics, it changed everything. It's like made my room sound massive. But then if I turn the room mics off, it sounds nice and tight and not like a garage. And, started accumulating mics, external pre's. Very last big purchase that I did was the UAD. And I got that last because a friend of mine, the infamous text thread that I'm on, he said, you need to get external pre's first because they don't need software updating and they maintain their value because of that, and get the UAD last. So I did, and he's right. I mean, it's like the UAD stuff sounds incredible, but it's even better when it hits an external pre going into the UAD.
Yeah.
It's and like.
Are you still using those warm audio mics?
Not the mics. I'm borrowing currently a Warm 84 as a condenser mic on a top snare next to a i5. The overheads right now, because I was tracking two different songs today. I have the Octava 012's overhead right now. And for one song, I used the McLeod FET47 as a crotch mic. For the second song, I used the Stager 2N ribbon mic as a crotch mic. Warm Audio 84 and i5 Audix top snare. Then bottom snare was a 57. Hi-hat is a M130 Barry Dynamic. Toms D4, and then the floor tom is a 421. The kick in is a D6. The kick out is a AEA 84, and then the sub kick is a Solomon, and the room mics are Fatheads. Cascades.
Man, all the audio nerds listening right now are probably like freaking out. Yeah.
and so it's the biggest thing, obviously, with any drummer when you have that many mics, it's phase. Trying to make sure polarity, whatever the word is, and I get corrected on it all the time. But just making sure everything is aligned and you don't have like canceling, audio.
But you had most of acquired a lot of that skill from MTSU, right? When you switched to recording.
Absolutely, yeah. That was the main reason why I relatively knew kind of what to do.
See, Lala was right.
I know.
He's always right.
He always wants to hear that too. But yeah, it helped a lot, man, knowing signal flow and doing sessions and working with different engineers. I have definitely some favorite engineers that I've worked with around town where I hear the drum sounds that they get and I'm like, how did you do that?
Yeah. Now I'm curious, are you mostly asked, I'm sure it's a variety of this, but are you mostly asked to just track drums and then those raw stems get then sent to the producer or another engineer, or are you actually delivering processed recordings from your studio?
Most of the time it's raw. I still run it through one of my templates is SSL 4K and UAD. I have that one. I did another one of the API and another one of the Neve 88RS. The SSL has been my favorite though, and I will EQ ever so slightly, just like the high pass, maybe the hat a little bit, even through the Moog pre-Qs, because ribbons are so warm. And then if there's something that is like that doesn't sound good, like if it's like a build and like 250, 300 hertz, maybe dial that back just a little bit. But mostly it's pretty raw. It's just hearing the mic go through the software processor of a SSL, how warm it sounds and how full, how much it fills out on some of the low end. It's just, that's great. So yeah, mostly the preamps and then the UAD, and I don't EQ much. I definitely don't compress. And the room mics, I try to leave them flat if I can.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll add certain things if I feel like it's too dull, or if I don't trust the engineer that's going to be mixing. That's when I'll go in and like do some stuff. But if I know the engineer, and I will reach out to them and say, hey, What do you want me to do? One time, I think it was this year actually, first week of the year when it snowed, I was supposed to do a session at Dark Horse, and I ended up testing positive for COVID, and the day before, and I reached out to her and I said, hey, because it hadn't snowed yet, so I reached out to her. I said, hey, I tested positive, blah blah blah. I said, but I am set up at home, and I can record remotely. Since you have all these songs, she had like 7 or 8 songs. She had them all tracked with piano and vocal to a click. And so I said, why don't y'all still go in? I'll do the Zoom link and Audio Movers link for the engineer there. And they have an SSL console there. And so I said, hey, we got on Zoom, and I gave him permission, remote access to my SSL software.
So wild, right?
He could... And we did a sound check, like hitting the snare. He's dialing it in on my software.
Yeah.
And toms, overheads, all of that. The only thing he couldn't do was like move any mics. Yeah. But yeah, he got it dialed in the way he wanted it. And so while they were getting sounds, I was already tracking one of the songs. And when they were ready, I was done with that. I was on the second song. I made a drum bounce of it, and I sent him all the stems, Dropbox. He just pulled in the MP3 drum bounce, let them play along with that, had all the other stems, and I was on to the next song. So I stayed like 2 songs ahead.
That's amazing.
Meanwhile, it was like snowing apocalypse outside.
Yeah,
you know?
It was.
Wow. But I was able to salvage that session.
Yeah.
By recording remotely. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
But again, just being able to adapt, and obviously been a huge part of your success.
Yeah. Yep.
So how have you kind of balanced that with, I mean, you still do in studio sessions. Does it just depend on the artist and
sure.
what they prefer?
Yeah. I still love doing in studio.
Yeah.
For sure.
Any favorite studios in town?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There was one, I'm forgetting the name. It was during the pandemic, so I recall seeing, it was a really high quality video that was getting filmed. I think it's in somewhat new studio.
Studio Nash? Oh, Lehman?
No, it's got, I think it's like a very white room, and it's like very tall ceilings. They have like this cool stairwell, I think, too.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
It's over there near Green Hills off Granny White.
Yeah, I think so.
Gray Box.
Gray Box, yeah.
Yeah.
You were doing some sessions there, right?
I was.
Were you doing those Yurt Rock play-alongs?
I did.
That was?
Yeah.
Cool.
We did some Yurt Rock with Jay White and Adam Smith.
Yeah.
That was fun. Adam Smith and I talked about that the other day. We were on a video shoot together, and we were like, man, we got to do that again. That was a ton of fun. Yeah, it's like some of my favorite studios. Ocean Way, obviously, is one of them. Soul Train. I just tracked there for the first time a couple months ago. The Studio Nash. I've been tracking there a bit. And it's always going to be studios where I feel like the drum sound is like great. Right. Like Sony Tree, I love that sound. Yeah, there are definitely quite a few. I love the vibe whenever I track it. A friend of mine, Casey Wasner, the Purple House out in Leapers Fort, great sounding room. Butch Walker's room, man. His studio he has 2 different rooms. He has like a ISO room, and then he has this big live room. And I played in the ISO room, and he is such an incredible engineer. And he's one of those that will record with effects to tape on the drums.
Wow.
So I'm like listening to like a delay, that was a really cool thing. And it created the vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he said, no, man, I commit. I want to, if we're going to do it, let's do it. I'm like, yeah. So yeah, his room is great. It's definitely other rooms around. It always usually depends for me. Like 70% of it, I will say, not that much. I'll say 50% of it is a room, 50% is engineer. As far as, if your drums and you are like the ground zero, like you have your thing, now will the room mess it up or will the engineer mess it
everything
up?
has to play nice.
Yeah.
If you hadn't said that, I was going to say, well, there's certainly a large part that's your actual product.
Yeah. You have your definite part, but like if the drums are out of phase or if the snare drum is like non-existent, it's like, man, turn the snare up.
Yeah.
So it can make you sound weak.
Yeah,
true.
I
had to very nicely tell an engineer that what he was doing made no sense. It's like, I'm seeing you're playing this smaller snare and it's pretty high tuned. So I pulled some of the lows out of it. So I'm like,
You did what?
don't do that.
Yeah.
Ever. That's a really dumb thing you just did.
Yeah, you get experimental engineers who will do some of the oddest things. And at that point, you have to go, okay, well, let me get my best performance and like get my check and leave.
Yep.
Even after you leave, they may still mess it up or they may sound replace. I mean, I've definitely had some people like sound replace stuff super out of context. It's like, tell me or let me hear the sample that you're going for so I can tune my drums as close to that as I can so I can play with that sensitivity.
Yeah.
Because if I'm playing with like a piccolo snare and you want the snare to be a 6.5, gushy snare, all those ghost notes that I'm doing are now compromised.
Right.
Because it's not going to sound good on this gushy sound.
No.
So let's find what that is first.
I like that approach. Before you replace it, I can promise you,
give me a chance. Give me a
chance.
chance. And obviously it depends on, what you're playing. But I've heard certain recordings of songs where I'm like, I know that drummer was probably playing this particular sound and it got sound replaced by an engineer who is one-dimensional, who didn't listen to the style of what was being recorded. They just knew their bucket of EQ tricks and their bucket of samples, and they were like, well, this is what my ear is used to, despite, again, this song and the style. It's just like, I'm used to this. It's like, sometimes that gets a little selfish.
Yeah.
But, again, I have to circle back to my guy, Steve Gadd. His drums always sound the same.
They do.
No matter what genre he's playing. Same snare, thuddy, sometimes maybe
doesn't even tune it equal on all sides.
Same cymbals. Like he kind of like usurps the whole like, I need to have like, I need to bring 6 kick drums to a session. I need to bring 9 snares, He brings 4 of the same snares, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like you were getting him. He is like the classic version of like, you're getting the artist, their voice. You're not going to ask, Casey Musgraves to sing like Carrie Underwood.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're getting Casey. You're getting Carrie. You're getting whoever, Taylor. You're getting them. So, but as musicians, we get caught up in gear.
Yeah. So easily.
And
there's so much, so much more we can just do with that one snare drum to tune it differently.
Totally. I did a YouTube video about that with like, picked some of my favorite Pearl snares and I tuned them 3 different ways. High, medium, low. And they all have a particular characteristic. You want to have your snares, you want to find the optimal sound for that snare. If you can, if you have the quantity of snares to be able to like say that snare is this, that snare is that, you know what I mean? But in general, some of my friends who do sessions 9 to 5 around town, they'll tell you, man, it's like 4 snares, each of them tune high, medium, low, super low or whatever. And they'll maybe tweak it to where if they have to tune it to a particular note of the key of the song, they'll do that. I just started getting asked to do that this year. Like, can you tune it to the, I was like, okay. Like something I was doing for a girl named Annie Bosco. I said girl, young lady, Annie Bosco. Tommy Sims was producing. He wanted the snare tuned to a particular note. Danny Duncan was engineering, one of my favorite engineers. And I was like, okay. And I'm like tuning and I'm hitting it and I'm like, okay, that sounds like an A flat. And I said, am I close in there? And it's like, he said, hit it. Yeah, that's it. I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Another session.
I've heard that more with tom relations, but not as much as with a specific snare to be that pitch.
Because that's going to be hit the most.
Yeah. Right.
Then I did a session with Josh Stone, Christmas album, and her producer, Steve, said, hey, let's get the drums tuned to the key. Like, all right, cool. Wow. I'm kind of game with that. I mean, at first I didn't think I would really like that. And I'm only using, sometimes on those sessions, I'm only using a rack on the floor. I'm not using 4 toms. That would be a problem.
Yeah.
I do tune my toms and fourths in general. It's not even intentional. It's just that's just where I hear them. No matter what the starting pitch is, I just tune them in fourths away from each other. I don't like to hear that rub. But as far as tuning to a key, I tend not to do, especially for a live show. That's pointless. Yeah. You know, in fact, a lot of times I'll mute the toms with Roots EQs or something.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'll put those on, get that tubby short sound. You can get away with a lot more, I think, when it's a short tom.
Yeah, for sure.
Get away with a whole lot more.
Yeah, throw a towel on there.
Yep. Yep.
What do you love most about recording? How did you kind of get into being a session drummer in the first place?
The final product, man. Like knowing that you've been a part of something that's documented, that is cool, and that you can hear growth in your own playing. I like the sounds. I like the process, especially when you can take your time and really it's not a rush job. Kev, again, going back to Kev Mo, he's very big into that. Like, let's get the sounds coming in correct, not replacing stuff. Like he's like EQing, he EQs heavily going to tape. And he wants the source of each instrument. If it's a bass, he wants you to dial it in first so he can leave it flat. So he wants you to like take off some of that low end. Yeah. And like stop trying to like eat all of that real estate up down there and expecting the engineer to do it. You dial it in. Right. Yourself. Like, I don't need to count on them to gate the toms. I need to do that on my own. Because if I do it, then I'll play a particular way and then they don't have to like kill the ghost notes, you know?
Yeah, I love that mindset of kind of like, as you said, mixing yourself behind the kit as if you are in the studio.
You'll see Questlove or Bernard Purdy, you know, people put a cloth, like a really light cloth on cymbals to kind of tame it a little bit. Moon gel. I use drum dots and moon gel on cymbals at times. And sometimes, you know, gaff taping the bottom head of the tom so that the top can still be open, but that bottom head shortens the sustain a bit, putting a case under the floor tom, like a pearl double pedal case. Yeah. Shorten the distance between the floor tom and the floor from like, you know, 14 inches down to like 6 inches without putting anything on the heads. When you hit the floor tom now, the sustain is substantially shorter. Yes. So little tricks like that, learning, watching YouTube, watching people like Aaron Sterling, man, who's like amazing.
We talk about him almost every podcast.
Yeah.
Got to talk to him on this podcast too.
So I mean, and what's the other guy on YouTube? That sound.
There's so many. Sounds like a drum.
Sounds like a drum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The stuff that he's put out is amazing.
They're awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cody and Ben.
Yeah. Really, really incredible stuff. So I just like the learning process of it all, like discovering new stuff and hearing different approaches. I asked Harvey Mason, how does he play to a click? He said he plays just slightly behind it so he can hear it. Some people like bury the click. That's another way of doing it. You know, it's just getting all of these ingredients so that when it's time for you to cook that particular meal, you know what the recipe is.
Yeah, bringing it back to food. I love it.
Always. Always.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you find that it's recording has sort of maybe come easier? Not that it was ever hard for you, but like in terms of, I know some people have like, you know, the red light fever and they get nervous or they multiple takes. Like,
totally. Yeah, it started.
Did you have that experience early on?
Absolutely. And there's still times where it's still kind of like, it depends on who you're playing with, you know. It depends. It just depends on, it's so many things. Like, is this a familiar session? Is it familiar company? Is a song your wheelhouse? Really, it comes down to that, you know. Is a song in your wheelhouse? If it's not, then that's when you really get nervous. Yeah. You know, I did a session where I was subbing for drummer Scott Williamson. It was a orchestral date at Ocean Way. And I was in my own booth. You had like 70-piece orchestra on the floor and bass next to me across the control room, piano. And I was asked to do it because, you know, he was like, man, can you do this? Can you sub for me on the session? So I go in and I get the book. I'm looking at it. The conductor comes in before the session, talks to me for a little bit. And it wasn't until we took the first break that I came out of the booth and like then everybody on the floor saw me, like friends of mine who were up there. They were like, man, I didn't know you were in there. And it was cool because I was brought in to read and nothing else. Yeah. And the camaraderie, the vibe it was really cool. But there was some nervousness there because a lot of the stuff was written out drum part wise. Yeah. And sometimes when you're having a sight read drum parts versus just sight reading key figures, it's very different. Reading the tom fill, and a hi-hat pattern that you have to play with the snare drum kind of on, off, all of this type of stuff. Your adrenaline pumps because you're excited, you're nervous, but it's not like nervous like, I don't know what I'm doing. So it's just a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we talked a bit about the cooking thing, sure. And it's very obvious that you're studious kind of in everything that you do. You attending and being, what did you say your role as an assistant?
Kitchen assistant.
Kitchen assistant, right. Obviously, you've taken that role to learn. Mm-hmm. And that obviously applies to your musical career as well. So this was just a total random thought I had, but did you ever watch Chef's Table?
No, I keep hearing about it, and I do need to watch. Somebody just mentioned it to me 2 days ago, and I need to watch it.
I would love to get your opinion of it because even as a person, I mean, I cook, but I don't take it nearly as seriously as sure. You obviously do. But as a musician, watching it and watching the way these chefs think about food was like watching someone write a symphony. I'm finishing these episodes and they're
totally
bringing these meals to people, and I'm like welling up with tears watching this. And I feel like you would probably have a similar experience. If you haven't watched, that's highly recommend that you do.
I watched during the pandemic. I watched Masterclass. I took some master classes from like Thomas Keller and Gordon Ramsay, Massimo Bottura, Wolfgang Puck, and I learned so much from Thomas Keller, man. Like because he's such an incredible teacher. There are people who are entertainers, and there are people who are really good teachers, and Thomas is definitely an incredible teacher and cook. And I've been to one of his restaurants in Napa. Oh my gosh, best meal I've had in the States ever.
One of the best meal I've ever had was in Napa as well.
Yeah. Yonville.
Yeah.
Was it Bouchon or?
Actually, there was a private party that I went to, and whoever the chef was that they hired for
Michelin
this
star chef.
It was I wept.
Yeah.
I wept.
Yeah, when you have a meal that makes you tear up, and I've had that happen before as well.
No, I had that yet.
Yeah.
I need to get out more.
It's different, man. It's different. Yeah. Now, food-wise, when you watch someone create and hearing them even talk about their creation, it's the same thing. It's like, you may not understand it, but when you hear someone who's passionate about and committed, as I was talking about, like the passion behind what they're playing is what you gravitate to. You may not understand what they're playing,
right? But
you hear the intensity behind it.
Yes.
Like when I hear some friends of mine talk about sports, I don't follow sports. I'm horrible with it. But when I hear them talk about it, it's like, I don't understand anything you're saying, but I'm like feeling all of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or hearing, just when you hear someone passionately talking about something,
right?
That connectivity, that energy that they're exuding.
It's very pertinent. Yeah. Rubs off. Yeah. So with cooking, that's definitely kind of where I get excited, Right. I mean, obviously talking about music, but, food, because food is more quantifiable than music. It's not as subjective. I mean, food, because you need to eat, period.
Right.
If you don't like it, still, you got to eat it because you don't have anything else to eat. Yeah. You know what I mean? Runny yolk eggs, I can't do. Like, I've tried several times in my life.
Yeah.
It gags me every time. But I can do carbonara, but if you give me eggs Benedict, cut it open and it's oozing out, it looks incredible to me, but I can't do it. But I love escargot. I love raw oysters. I love beef carpaccio. I love steak tartare. Endive or endive is, depending on where you come from, is this very bitter green. Beets, okra, like all the foods that people kind of go,
Yeah.
I love, but there are certain things for sure that I can't quite do yet. Like, I haven't done sea urchin yet. Not yet.
I'm scared to try it.
I'm gonna do that.
It's just one of those things where, like music, there is some subjectivity there, Some people like things simple. Scrambled eggs.
That's me.
You know what I mean? But like when you get into the world of scrambling eggs, there's different levels of like, how do you like it coagulated? Like, do you like it like
more wet?
More wet, or like, do you like it more fine, almost like grits?
And all the seasoning options, of course.
Seasoning options, yeah. I mean, but like just the texture. Do you like it rubbery?
Yep.
Do you like the big coagulation, like the big chunks, or do you like smaller? So it's like all those layers.
Yeah.
And everything with cooking, though, that's so cool is it's all about technique. Your taste is your taste, period. You like a lot of salt, you put more salt in it, but the technique of how you get to making that bread or that sauce or that creme brulee, whatever it is, the technique of how to achieve what your palate desires.
Right.
Music, technique gives you longevity. Bad technique, rotator cuff issues, knee issues with like how you're situated, back issues.
Yeah.
That's kind of where technique comes in. But like you see somebody play traditional fast, match grip fast, pinkies off the stick fast, it's like, or feet, heel up, heel down, like technique. I mean, are you getting the sound that you want?
Right.
It's not as rooted. It's not a chemistry based outcome. Food is chemistry, science based. If you have moisture on a steak, you try to sear it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's bad technique. You have to like dry the steak and then sear it, then you get that nice crust on it. Burgers, same thing. If you add something like shortening or bacon fat to the ground beef cold, then cook it, that bacon fat comes out and it makes that nice crunch on the burger that you get. So, I mean, it's like these little things that you learn, those are technique things to achieve, like, man, how come I can get my burger to taste like this? Like, you can cook, you can follow directions.
Yeah.
Read the directions, watch a video, look at the technique, look at how they're cutting, and don't be afraid. I mean, it's all about patience. And that's the thing about cooking that people shy away from is the patience. It's a lot of patience doing something as simple as mise en place, like getting everything ready before you turn the eye on, have all your ingredients laid out first. And that takes time, but the outcome, you will like the outcome way more than if you were just like eyeballing, like, let me just get the seasoning down, let me try a little bit of this and let me try this, just grabbing stuff, not thinking it through. Then you won't remember how to get back to what you just did the next time you want to create it. So it's like I said, it can be cumbersome at first, but the outcome will outweigh the work.
I love this whole conversation. The parallels of cooking and drumming. Like even you just described me like how to, cook a burger. And like that whole time I was thinking of like, okay, well, how to play the snare better, like having that patience. And even like you said, like having the, prepping the kitchen, like prepping the drum set, making sure that it's ergonomically set up correctly and then
tuned.
Man, it's so cool. Yeah, just there's so many parallels. I find that fascinating.
Keeping your knife sharp, keeping a good pair of sticks, It's like you don't want to go to play the ride somewhere with a chipped tip on a chips, you know what I mean? Like soft sounding tip on a ride. You want that knife to be sharp.
Yeah.
So every time you pull it out, hone it and then start cutting. Makes everything easier. Yeah. So that's all.
One more related question.
Absolutely.
Just to give a shout out back to Wine Down Nashville. Of course, Donaldson's probably Nashville's only music themed wine bar.
Yep.
If you haven't checked them out, definitely do so. But so with wine, is that also a passion? Do you normally pair wine with the meals? Or?
I don't pair wine. I just really love wine.
Okay.
Really love wine. I'm going to go buy some when I leave here.
Cool.
Where do you usually go?
So the place I've been going the most has been Total Wines in Brentwood because they have the biggest selection. One of my favorite places to buy curated wines is Woodland. Is that what it's called? It's right across the street from 5 Points in East Nashville. They always get like very obscure wines that you're not really going to find at typical places.
Cool.
Interesting.
And so, and they know what they're getting. It's really cool. Like French and Italian wines are kind of where I gravitate to the most. If I do domestic wine, it's usually Napa wines because I don't like sweet wines, blends and stuff. and like certain wines have a metallic taste to it that I don't like.
Sweet.
Fantastic.
Cool, man.
Love it.
Well, yeah, you want to just quickly plug your socials, website, where people can get hold of you?
So you can find me at Stix Finnie, STIXFINNIE, Instagram. You can go to my website as well. It has all of the links on there. MarcusFinnie.com, Apple Music, Spotify, Bandcamp, all that stuff. Yeah. So
Awesome.
thank you so much for having me, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. So we'll go home and eat some spaghetti.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Tell me how that sauce turns out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nashville Drummers Podcast. If you liked it, please consider leaving us a review on the Apple Podcast app.
Also, check out our new website, NashvilleDrummersPodcast.com. And if you're not already following us on Instagram, you can follow us at Nashville Drummers Podcast.